Hey everyone, this is Sky here, bringing you a quick channeling of Mars in Cancer, which we will be having for about the next 2 months, basically. This transit is moving from May 15th of 2019 to July 1st of 2019, and I definitely knew when I woke up this morning that I wanted to speak about it. I wasn't sure if I would make a video on it, or if I would just allude to it in the June and July general readings and do it more that way. But I have felt the energy come in. It's been in for about a week now as I am channeling, and I definitely think that it's worthy of speaking specifically on. In fact, it kind of overtook my Venus-Uranus video that I did the week before last, which I'll link below because that is still kind of in effect as well. We have Mars moving into the sign of the moon. We have Mars moving into Cancer, and this is a traditionally debilitated sign for Mars to be placed in because it is such a passive, nurturing, pull back energy with a cardinal flare that has to be very coordinated in the way that it moves forward directly. And Mars is more like boundless, direct, masculine thrust, push forward. So the energies do not really harmonize well. That's not to say that a lot of healing can't take place during Mars in Cancer. It is actually one of the strongest catalysts, one of the most catalyzing transits for potent healing, for overturning, turning over a new leaf, turning over what no longer works in your life. We will definitely be called to make decisions during the next 2 months. This isn't a period of time where we can just pull back and really rest on our laurels. Mars in Cancer demands that emotionally we make progress. It demands emotional confrontation for some, and to just be able to not sweep things under the rug. When I first felt the energy of Mars in Cancer, thinking about it this morning as I was meditating, to me it felt like the last layers. I kept hearing the words last layers coming forward, and I'm feeling that this retrograde cycle that we're in throughout the rest of this summer with Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter all simultaneously retrograding, along with this debilitated Mars transit. And then, it moves towards Leo, which is a much stronger placement for Mars later in the summer. I do feel that there is a last leg of the journey, like a last obstacle to overcome here. And I think that it has a lot to do with communication. We have Mercury moving through a good part of its cycle. It's moving from Taurus to Gemini throughout the duration of this transit, and then Gemini towards Cancer. This is a good area of the zodiac for Mercury, so I feel that we have a healthy opportunity for communication as long as we are not emotionally bottled up. Mars in Cancer brings with it a lot of opportunities to push things down, to even mistakenly interpret your own emotions, to think that you feel a certain way about something and really decide it, and then it comes up later and you are kind of surprised at the way that you actually ended up feeling. And I also feel that it's harder to find excuses for the way that we act or the way that we emote, the way that we see our lives. It's like as time passes throughout this year, with the current setup with the Saturn retrograde in Capricorn, Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, it's so easy to have a reference point. It's so easy to know, what your trigger is, what isn't good for you, what's bad territory for you, and to see yourself perhaps really ruminating or stagnating in something that is well known to be bad territory. I feel it to be very connected to this whole idea of the last layers that I'm speaking about, that you really get the strongest sense of validation of what isn't right for you, or the strongest sense of validation of what is as well. It becomes much more clear, which to me feels to be balancing out the very hazy Neptune and Pisces that we have. So everything kind of works in our solar system with a reason. Like there needs to be this very strict definition happening in order to counterbalance the extremely cloudy, psychic, vacillating energy of Neptune. I feel that the Mars in Cancer, to specifically channel on that, from this period of, here in the present until July 1st of 2019, it's so important to respectfully clarify what doesn't work for you. So this transit can bring about a temper. There can be bottled up feelings, as I was saying, emotional explosions, emotional scenes. Marriages that are struggling tend to struggle most during Mars and Cancer. Relationships that are struggling, family relationships, marriages, romantic relationships, platonic relationships, any of those that have an issue when Mars goes into Cancer. Mars comes into Cancer to unobstruct that that energy pathway. Wherever there's an obstruction, wherever there's a calcification of energy, Mars in Cancer really is the most catalyzing energy to break that. So that's not always the most calm, peaceful experience, especially if there's a lot of resistance to the fact of the matter towards what is actually happening. Or if you have a personality type that is very honed towards emotional expression or towards anger or towards even narcissism, these types of things get very obvious with Mars in Cancer, because it is also serving, for you or yourself to see it clearly. So if someone has a narcissistic tendency, if someone has an issue with temper, an issue with anger management, an issue of depression, these things are made very clear during this time. So there's no faking it. There's no, oh, I just almost had a temper tantrum, but I held back, and then no one actually sees you or sees the truth of your emotions. Usually Mars in Cancer will push those things over the edge. So yes, it is very important during this transit to note when you're being pushed over the edge, what's pushing you over the edge, if people around you are being pushed over the edge, and what that means, and what is causing that. Again, we have a very well-placed Mercury, thank God, throughout most of the duration of this transit. We do actually have a Mercury retrograde that comes up towards the end of June, I believe it is. I believe it moves into shadow on June 19th. But again, that is more towards the end of this Mars transit. So by then, hopefully, we've seen these things, we've identified these things, and we've moved forward. And maybe use that as a guideline as well for the internal understanding, the processing time for understanding these emotional issues. Like by around June 20th, you might want to see that you've been able to acknowledge, okay, this person is not emotionally compatible with me, or this situation or my own coping mechanism here is something that is very damaged and I have to work on healing that. And then by the time the Mercury retrograde comes in, it sort of offers a reset. It offers maybe a scrambling, but also the ability to go back on the processing experience. And it all, even though it's not maybe the most comfortable experience of change, it all really balances out perfectly because you have some very, again, vast void-like energy ruminating here as well, and some very sharp, precise, quick changing energy coming through as well. So there's a lot of things that you can catch on to, a lot of paradigms to exist in with this period of time, really. And Mars in Cancer does light it up with emotional experiences. If you find yourself in the place of emotionally addictive, which is something that becomes clear and apparent, like the other issues as well with Mars in Cancer, people who have addictive emotional tendencies, needing to purge emotions frequently, needing, constant emotional validation, feeling bored when things are unemotional, this will get challenged during this time, and this will see arguments from the other direction I'm feeling. Again, it's the last layers of this experience. It's coming over that. It's overcoming that. It is overcoming the layers. It's overcoming the sense of why I need this response, why I need this experience in my life to push me. When things are easy, they're boring. I don't feel pushed. I can't accomplish anything. So I need something to threaten me to move forward. These types of things are very honed into Mars in Cancer because something deeper about Mars in Cancer and why perhaps it's traditionally debilitated is because of how instinctual that energy is. It's almost too instinctual. Mars is the inner fire, the inner push, the inner attraction towards life, motivation. It's like that spark, that first spark that sort of ignites the universe. And Cancer is also sort of the polarized opposite same energy. And what do I mean by that? It is the sort of more feminine, reserved, passive spark, like this passive energy that gets activated by something. It's so intuitive, it's so instinctual. And Mars is actually a similar energy. It can be quite intuitive and certainly very instinctual. So when they come together, it only really operates in lower brain instinctual ways. So there's not really a lot of thought about the dynamics or the parameters or the, actually higher vibration, higher brain systems in play or at the stake here, or things that are at stake that aren't just a matter of lower brain instincts. So in this way, I see Mars in Cancer to be a bit of a blundering energy, like sort of blindfolding itself to instinctively, intuitively navigate the minefield. You know what I mean? That's what I see with Mars in Cancer. It's like it has the ability to do that, and it's so instinctual, so intuitive that it can maybe do that, but it could also just take the blindfold off and easily walk through. So Mars in Cancer sometimes makes things too hard on itself. It's its own worst enemy. It really sometimes will cause situations that do not have to be super emotionally difficult to be that. And what it ultimately ends up in is solitude, because people will definitely go away from Mars and Cancer. Like people tend to see this type of quality as a retractor, or it's like the opposite end of a magnet. Again, Mars deals with attraction, it deals with how we pull people in. So when Mars is in Cancer and it's debilitated, it can actually detract, or it can push people away. So it becomes a bit of an unattractive placement for Mars, in the sense that people just get a sixth sense about someone with Mars in Cancer, or during the time that Mars in Cancer is transiting, there can be like a no, I want to move away from that. It's more like, what do you want to move away from versus what you want to move toward. And I really like that. I find that to actually be the most important message of this video. This time more so highlights what you need to move away from versus what you need to move toward. So keep that in mind as we move through this transit, and try to not get too upset if you're feeling like unattractive, or if you're feeling maybe a bit repellent. That's the word I've been looking for this whole time. If you feel like you're repelling people, that's not a problem right now. Mars in Cancer is a good time to make progress in the self. That's one positive of this placement, is it really demands progress in the self and healing in the self. And it gives that through not distracting you. Again, you're by yourself. You're in solitude a lot of time with this energy in some way. So you have ample time to look within, and there's not much distraction to prevent you from looking within. Not a lot of like, huge burgeoning romances, or a lot of flings, or a lot of like sudden social things where time passes and there's not really much emphasis on the self. That is certainly not going to happen during this time for most people. So try to take it as maybe the last little bit of time before we sort of jump on that wagon. Again, we have Jupiter retrograde in Sagittarius here as well, which I have a video on if you want to check on my channel. But that also contributes to this type of energy too. Again, Jupiter is in its like favorite home, party sign Sagittarius, very social, very connective, very enjoyment of life energy. And it's retrograde, so that also will kind of pull back from that sense of like, wow, things are just so fun and so enjoyable, and there's candy all around me, and time is passing, and I'm healing. Again, we're pulled more towards solitude. We're pulled more to look underneath that, or underneath what we are. And it's sort of the last part of that. By the time Mars moves into Leo, it's going to amp up the connection to other people. So Mars is in Cancer. We take this time to look within. We take this time to heal. We don't look at being repelling, or even some people could feel repulsive during this time. We don't look at it that way. We don't take that insecure, because it's a good breeding ground for insecurity too, Mars and Cancer. We don't look at repelling as repulsive. We look at it as an opportunity to see what we can hone within. And, we can be thankful and grateful for that opportunity, because we move into that time where things get better with a lot more capability to appreciate it, and a lot more capability to retain it as well. So think a bit about this transit. Think a bit about what you need to heal within, what changes you want to make to yourself, and don't let other people determine that for you. That can be another danger here too. Again, people will tend to fall away before they change you when it's not right for you. On that note, I believe that I will go ahead and conclude the video. Again, just remember, this is about what we need to move away from, and noting that, not so much what we need to move toward. It's okay to think about what you need to move toward, but know that that might happen more towards at least getting past this particular transit, and know that you'll be able to have that much more to go off of, that much more energy to utilize in that process of moving toward when Mars goes into Leo, through the time that you spent here knowing what you needed to move away from. So anyway, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Again, shorter video because I wanted to spend more time on the June readings, which I am finishing up right now. And you can click the center of your screen right now to see the June readings early and ad-free on Patreon. I so appreciate my patrons. I love spending time with them and connecting on the community. So hit the center of your screen if you would like to come and check that out. Much love, everyone. We'll be talking soon. Good luck. Bye.